Welcome to another Cuke Audio phone chat. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives. Cuke Audio is a project of Cuke Archives. Today we are honored to have Kazuaki Tanahashi as our guest, and we will be joined later on after 25 minutes or something by Fred Harriman. Now, Fred, if you've been following these podcasts, you know is a translator, very high-level translator, who helped me with Crooked Cucumber. He translates both Japanese and Spanish at court level and, business level and for the U.S. State Department and stuff like that. But I was very fortunate to have him help me with Crooked Cucumber, and a lot of that comes out herein. Kaz, we call Kazuaki Tanahashi Kaz, he first came to the Zen Center to visit Shunryu Suzuki in about 1964. And at that time, he talked to Suzuki about what he talks about in lectures and how he teaches. And Suzuki said, I think he was speaking on the Blue Cliff Records or something at the time. And Kaz said, why don't you give them the best we have to offer? Dogen. And Dogen is the founding teacher of the Soto Zen sect, although he didn't intend to found a sect, sort of like Jesus didn't intend to found Christianity. And it's an old story. There is a page for Kaz on Cuke.com. If you just go to Cuke.com, Cuke.com, and write Tanahashi, Tanahashi, in the site search box, or go to the people, drop down and hit names, you'll find him. There's tons on him. But if you go to brushmind.net, that's his website. And let me just go there right now. Now, he's a Dogen scholar, but he's probably better known as an artist, as a shodo, our Japanese calligraphy artist, and an outlandish one. Shodo, Japanese calligraphy has always just been black sumi ink, and he does a lot of that too. But he does wild colors and giant ones, and he's done them, for the United Nations and various places in the world. And if you go to brushmind.net, you'll see where he's had exhibitions and so forth. Let me just read you from there, brushmind.net/publications, a list of books here. Now, his latest book is Peace or War. Kaz is a peace activist, and he and I have both been involved in anti-nuclear work and stuff like that. But he's just been ongoing for decades. He and Mayumi Oda founded Plutonium Free Future to, well, anyway, I'm not going to get into the details of all that. And worried about nuclear energy, but especially about nuclear weapons and nuclear war. So there's Peace or War, artworks by Kazuaki Tanahashi. Then there's Painting Peace, Art in a Time of Global Crisis. And Heart of the Brush, The Splendor of East Asian Calligraphy. Zen Chants, 35 Essential Texts with Commentary. The Heart Sutra, a comprehensive guide to the classics of Mahayana Buddhism. The Essential Dogen, Writings of the Great Zen Master. Sky Above, Great Wind, the Life and Poetry of Zen Master Ryokan. Circles, Zen Calligraphy von Kazuaki Tanahashi, that's in German. Treasury of the True Dharma Eye, Zen Master Dogen's Shobo Genzo, 2 volumes. Amazing, amazing. I'm going to stop reading books from him now because I could see I'd have to go on for a few more minutes. So here we go with Kaz Tanahashi. How are you, and how's everything going there? How's Linda?
We are all fine, so I don't just go out so much. Maybe 2 days I went to visit him in the countryside, but otherwise I stay home. So, guess what? If you give me
Yeah.
3 months and then stay home, I'll be happy. I just maybe write a book, finish a book. So that's what I'm doing. Oh, yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I've been making podcasts recently. I've got another book Shambhala's putting out of just little vignettes of Suzuki Roshi.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great.
I've got a book, I'm well along on it, called Tassajara Stories. That would be another big book. But I keep getting involved with all these other projects that take me from it. And the podcasts have been very time consuming and interesting. Yeah. I'm reading Crooked Cucumber and commenting on it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's very well researched and very beautifully written. You're a great writer. Just fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Kaz read Crooked Cucumber long ago in English, and now he starts talking about reading the translation, and he had, been an advisor to me when I worked on it, and we're in touch. So he says the book's well written in Japanese, and Hideko Oga, Graham Betsey's widow, says the same thing. She just got a copy. So that's good to hear. And that's interesting because it's based on a translation made after the book came out in English by one of Suzuki's students during the war. And he did it mainly so the family could read it and people very close, see what the book's about. But then he decided he wanted to publish it, of course. And so I sent samples of he sent me samples, and I sent them to Kaz and to Hideko and Kinji Muro and some various Japanese, and all of them, including the Suzuki family, said it's not good enough to publish. They said it was sort of strange, old-fashioned Japanese. And since then, there have been various efforts by me and others to get it translated. And finally, Etsuko at Samga, who I had a relationship with Samga, took it up and worked with it for a couple of years, few years, I can't remember. And because I was in touch with him, but I lose track of time. Kaz moves in the conversation to the choice of the title, and that's Magata Curie, a literal translation of Crooked Cucumber. And when he first got it, first thing he said was in an email, why didn't they use what he was called, Hebo Curie, which Fred calls stunted cucumber, and I say rot cucumber. But Suzuki's choice of Crooked Cucumber is the phrase that flows the best and works the best. And good for him. He had a sense of the poetry, and Kaz, you will hear, and maybe he already has said it, I can't remember what's gone before, says, the nuance and the poetry are lost with that title. And anyway, and Suzuki, made it clear that it was a put down and not just a joke. And Magata Curie is not much of a put down. It just means bent cucumber. I mean, like Hideko said, Hebokuri, she said, oh, how Japanese. And that's what he was called, she said. Oh, yeah, that means like substandard. You know, it's the whole point of the book is he comes from being, you know, sort of like just uh, a crooked cucumber monk to coming to America and starting the Zen Center, founding the first Zen Buddhist monastery in the Western world. Fred says that the Hebokuri, yeah, it's a put down, but he said, you know, that's very acceptable hazing.
Well, I started reading when I was visiting the countryside, maybe 3 days ago. I started reading, and yeah, I read Seijun Ishii's Afterword. It was very well written. I read your preface and then Koichi's preface, and everyone was doing very well. And then you are fully aware of this Hebokuri. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone is aware of it, but nobody kind of try to push to use the original nickname.
You know, they didn't tell me they changed the name. They were asking me about changes in the book, but then I saw they called it Magata Kuri, and I said, "Why did you do that?" Now, I don't know if we know exactly what Soen Gyokujun called Shunryu, but Hoitsu thought it was Hebokuri. He told me that.
Yeah, and I think maybe Oksan told me too.
There you go. There you go.
Well, this is my sort of, I assumed that, you know, and then I knew about it, but I think she told me, but, you know, I'm not sure. But, you know, one thing that is sure is that it's a derogatory name.
Yeah.
Right? You know, you call obese people like a pig, you know? It's kind of, it's maybe in a way dominative, and then in a way it's maybe cute, but it's sort of insulting name, right? So the idea is that maybe your book is basically, he was kind of really like that, called someone like this sort of worthless. And then he made it
you mean
this way, you know?
They told me they when I asked about it, Kaoru, who was coordinating with Akiba in Oakland, and you know Gengo Akiba, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You know Fujita?
I know very well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right. So
I know
they
him very
were
well.
going over.
Which he's great. But, you know, publisher decides, you know, it's not translator, it's not the original author. Publisher has the right
the name
to decide.
Right.
The title of the but usually maybe the publisher will talk to the translator, and you know, maybe not the original author because they may not speak English, but at least the translator and then supervisor, like Isho, he they may have approved it, but they should have talked to you.
Well, they didn't talk to me about the name of the book, but Eisaku in Samga. You know, the book was translated by Sadayoshi Asaoka, who died, and
Right.
I showed you
Yeah.
what he did years ago, right? And
Huh.
yeah, and
I
everybody who saw it, you and Kenji Muro and
hmm
and the family Hoitsu, they said it's too weird, not good enough to publish, but nice for the family. But then Eisaku at Samga, I know him and Toru. I've been to their office because they did another book of mine, and they do Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. They wanted me to do a sequel to Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I said, I can't do that. You should use Ed Brown's Not Always So. So they did that. But anyway, Eisaku took Asaoka's translation and redid it. And then Isho and Akiba and Hoitsu went over it, and as a group, they talked about various things, with me, emailing me, except they didn't include me on the name change. But I think that was decided as a group.
Right.
Kaoru told me they had a lot of discussion about it and decided,
About the
to
title?
use Magata Kuri. I didn't know why exactly. I thought maybe, they want it to look nice. That maybe Heibo Kuri was too negative, or maybe too obscure, because people don't use that now.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, probably, yeah, young people may not know.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know
That's very
exactly
true.
why. But I sent you an email with in chapter 6, and I included all this in an email I sent you yesterday, or actually this morning, your time. With when I
Okay. Well, I haven't checked
oh,
the
don't
email.
worry.
Yeah, I'm
Doesn't
sorry.
matter.
But,
I can
I'm behind. I'm behind
Well,
the
it was,
email communication.
I had talked about in briefly how Kishizawa, Suzuki's, he was a Zuishin of Kishizawa, right?
I know.
It talked
I
about
know.
how Kishizawa
Yeah.
had supported the war effort, and they took
Yeah.
that out. Yeah.
They took it out?
They softened it. Yeah, they did. No, they did. Yeah, completely. And I didn't like that. But I said it was Hoitsu that he didn't, they're thinking about their family and the neighbors and their danka, and they don't want anything embarrassing. They're very nervous,
Right.
When I'm around
Yeah,
there,
I know.
they're nervous I'm going to talk. When I had to interview people for the book behind their back, they wanted me only to talk to people they introduced me to. And I went out and found other people, and they'd say, "Oh, you shouldn't talk to him. He's very controversial. People will, and and also." I mentioned that Shunryu Suzuki's very close friend, a very interesting and controversial figure, Kozo Kato, had
Yeah.
he visited leper colonies, and he wrote a book about the Eta. And they didn't want to say that. They said we can't say the word
Oh.
Eta. Uh, but they said something like he wrote a book about discriminated people or something. What do you think of that?
Hmm. Now they call it
Uh-huh.
Burakumin, village people. And then one time, maybe you were there in Palo Alto. They have conference about
Oh yeah, I was
Shunryu
there.
Suzuki, right? Yeah. And then there's, I think, Professor Nara. He was the president of Kamazawa University. And then he was talking about engaged Buddhism.
Mm.
And then he was only talking about Sotoshu efforts to deal with this Burakumin issue. And he was not talking about any kind of war or environment or anything. For him, engaged Buddhism is just that. So I said hello to him before his talk, but I didn't want to talk to him after that. I was totally disgusted. But anyway, so this thing is kind of maybe Satoshi is serious about this Burakumin
I used
issue.
the word Eta, but I guess I should have said Burakumin.
Right, yeah. So, by the way, my
Yes.
book, Painting Peace, has been translated.
At this point, Kaz and I talk about some private sort of publishing stuff and that I cut out. And then we come back in talking about Zen is Right Here. My little book of vignettes about Suzuki Roshi, Zen is Right Here.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's a very nice
you.
book, great book.
They published it as Zenwa Imakoko. It's Zen is Now Here. Sort of like Zen is Here and Now.
It's very bad.
Now he shifts to talking about the version in English published by Shambhala.
Zen is Right Here is very good title. I know maybe they use my painting on the cover, right? After Suzuki Roshi's. Yeah, I know that's in English is fantastic, but this maybe what can you do? Translation cannot be better than or even as good.
Why don't I call Fred and you want to meet Fred?
Yeah, I think it would be nice. Maybe he emailed me like I don't know, 3 or 4. I'm sort of behind the email, as I told you. I have so many things. So, but I can just ask his phone number, and then I'll just call him and then talk to him. He seems to be very nice, and he wrote in Japanese, and then it's kind of perfect Japanese. I mean, not so many people can write Japanese. He's amazing.
Well, let me.
Yeah. What is he doing now? Is he still translating?
I can get him on the phone with us real quick. So what has happened now is that Kaz and Takayo spoke in Japanese for about 10 minutes waiting for Fred to get back. And so Fred is just now getting on the line, and Kaz has just said goodbye to Takayo. And I had connected Fred and Kaz with email, sort of introduced them to each other. And Fred had written an email to Kaz, which he mentioned earlier, was he was very impressed with the Japanese. And now at this point, Kaz says, David's on the line, so we should speak English. And Fred says, I'm hard of hearing in Japanese. to not understanding what Kaz had just said, just saying he's hard of hearing and just sort of warning him about that. And then, so he keeps speaking Japanese, and which I enjoy listening to. So now we will join Fred and Kaz.
I'm Kaz.
変わりました。
Okay, maybe
どうも、フレッドです。
David is there, so maybe we should speak English.
耳が遠くて、ちょっと聞こえにくかったんですけども、はい、今、聞こえるようになりました。
あ、そうですか。
はい。
なんか素晴らしい、最初にお手紙をいただいて、非常にびっくりしたんですけども、素晴らしい方だなと思って、でまたその後でいただいてますけど、まだ私、ちょっとなんかまだ拝見してないんです。すみません。I'm so much behind. I know all this email things. I have so much email debts to many people.
Yeah. Oh, I know what
yeah.
that's like.
I'm writing a book, so I'm more, like I sort of postpone communication. So
I want to follow your example. Thank you.
No. No, that's well, the thing is that David asks me questions and I try to just give him a quick answer because that's something I want to do with him right now, and it's all pro bono. This is all something that I've just I've really found that Suzuki Shinryu is somebody who really means a lot to me in many different ways, being into different cultures as well, and especially at the time that he went back and forth between two different cultures. And so,
So, Fred, are you aware that they were going to use this Magatta Kyui title?
No. I didn't know. I wasn't in on that, and it's just David just lets me know every once in a while when he needs a little bit of help, and I try to help him. But that wasn't an issue that I worked on, and I think both David and I were concerned about that, whether it was ただの直訳っていうかもう単純直訳でいいのかみたいなね。デイビッドさんも私もちょっと思ってましたんでね、でもいろいろちょっとですね、時間かけて、考えてみれば、まあ、理由はあると、そういうふうに曲がったキュウリという、題にする根拠はあるというふうに感じました。はい。まあ、結論。
だけども、結局、あだ名でもっと蔑んでるような。So it's derogatory, right? Nickname. So this is lost. So he was kind of, as he said in his book, he was sort of regarded almost like useless disciple, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe so, and then from there he made it who he was. So that is maybe important sort of turnaround, right?
Yes.
So the derogatory kind of sense is important and which is lost, and also maybe the
Yeah.
poetry is lost.
Yeah.
You know, Magata Kyuri has nothing to do. You know, I mean, the idea, he said, well, I'm something like kind of grocery stores cannot
Yeah.
sell, right?
Right.
But some bent cucumbers, they can be kind of merchandise. You know, they can sell, and the people don't feel anything good or bad. You know, it's just a cucumber. So it's the whole kind of maybe associations or nuance has been lost.
Yeah, yeah.
Poetry is lost. Kind
Well,
of the truth is lost.
Let me ask you further then. If you hear the two words together in Japanese, Magata Kyuri, is there anything that you would relate it to? I mean, for example, if you heard Hebo Kyuri, you might think, oh, that's something that I've heard of. Somebody used that expression. That's an expression. But when you hear Magata Kyuri in Japanese,
it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean
random,
anything
right?
to me.
It's just random. Yeah, it's just random.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, Fred and David, publisher has a right to choose the title, not the original author or not the translator. The publisher is publisher's kind of domain, you know.
Do you know why
I can
they
ask
chose it?
Eisaku who decided. Because he's working for Samga. He was in charge of it. Because there was a team deciding, and I would think it was just as likely that Hoitsu preferred it, but I don't know for sure.
No, David, I didn't realize you were on the line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, David is a good listener.
I love hearing the Japanese. I understand a lot of it, and it's so wonderful to hear it. Makes me natsukashi, you know. Makes me miss Japan.
Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, let's all go. Let's go. Let's go to Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss it a
Well,
lot.
maybe we should first think about kind of investigate. Yeah, who kind of recommended and who kind of decided and so forth. Maybe instead of demanding something, you know, maybe we should try to understand this situation.
That would be important. I mean, it's
not
already
gonna
done.
change. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
It's just something interesting to talk about, and also I always told them, whatever you want, your decision. So an interesting development here after we were finished having our conversation. I get an email from Hideko Oga, who's been involved with me in some of these conversations. And she says, in the text of the book, they're using Hebo Kyuri. She says, this is most interesting. So I just wrote back and I said, all right, did they use it exclusively? I want more details. But that's interesting, and it casts a whole new light on the subject, which we're beating to death, much more than I'm sure you care about. But anyway, I think that's really interesting. I just that they would just in the book, when they told me that they didn't want to say that Kishizawa supported the war effort. They wanted to tone it down. Well, they certainly did tone it down. Fred, tell Kaz about that because you looked into that.
Yeah, if you look at the book, it says something about Kishizawa-san saying that he wrote a book about kairitsu, so order and discipline, order, discipline, order/discipline, something like that, and that he was he supported from a Buddhist standpoint the national policy of Japan at the time, and that
San Francisco Zen Center purchased the I think about 20 volumes of Kishizawa's commentaries on Shobogenzo, Dogen's life work, and then I studied that, and then I couldn't really use his work because I was so embarrassed that he was saying something like, maybe when you shoot the enemy, maybe you use samadhi power or something like that. So he was totally kind of imperialistic and, militaristic and so forth. Very unfortunate. He was a great scholar, and then Suzuki Roshi respected him a lot, but very unfortunate.
They just took that part out. They took that part out of the Japanese version of the book.
Let me read you.
It's not there.
Yeah, let me read you what it says in English. Kishizawa would scold Shunryu in front of the young men at times, and Shunryu would accept his teacher's words with no resistance. But he did not agree with the old man on everything. Kishizawa was lending Buddhism's support to the nation's war effort. He wrote a book on the precepts in which he expressed support for Japan's militarism. He told young men to fire their guns with the mind of Buddha, like the samurai of old, with no thought of life and death. So, Kaz, you actually read that in the original. Wow.
Maybe not from this precept book, but Shobogenzo commentary.
And the Japanese translation from lended support to the, and then in yours, in the English it says to the war. From it in the Japanese version it doesn't say. From then on it's different. It doesn't say to the war. It says lended support to the national policies, something like that. It's different. The Japanese version is different. And then, of course, the point about firing guns is just not.
And that was Hoitsu's request. It said very strong request that not be used. Later in the book, it says that Kishizawa regretted his support for the war. And let's see if they keep that in. I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, it's...
D.T. Suzuki supported, many people. I think this is just the whole kind of, I don't know, kind of national hysteria.
When I visited Hoitsu, it was at the time that the Omu Shindikyo incidents were really out there and in the news, and he described Japan during the war as the entire nation being in a cult like Om Shinrikyo.
Om Shinrikyo was a doomsday cult that was poisoning people in the Japanese subway with sarin gas. 12 people died, 5 separate attacks. Later found to be guilty of an earlier attack. They had a bunch of members that were just finally executed 2 years ago, and that happened back in 1995.
That's the way Hoitsu described it. And he said it's difficult have Americans understand that. Sorry, we got a...
Well, like Germany was like that too.
Yeah, so that's what Hoitsu tried to explain to me. He said it would be as if, you know, the entire nation were as crazy as the Om Shinrikyo was. It was that crazy. That's what. So there's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no vacillating on the part of Hoitsu about what was wrong. I mean, he's very clear that it was all wrong. But
you know, I mean, much better. You know, like Crooked Cucumber is much more honest. You know, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, Richard Baker wrote an introduction. He kind of, like he was anti-war activist.
Oh, he said
something like that, right?
He said Suzuki led a pacifist movement during the war. I got him to take that out. That's not in there anymore.
that's good.
It was completely made up, kind of projection, completely projection.
But that's not there anymore. That's been gone for 20 years. That since and also there were other changes I got in the book, and I just got some new changes in it, some new corrections, and one that's coming out this year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good for you. Okay.
There was a Zen Center, UC Berkeley meeting on a conference, 2-day conference on Shunryu Suzuki. And Yvonne Rand stood up in the Zen Center and said, during the war, Suzuki went out and held up a big sign that said the war is wrong or something. And I knew I could only say, on the whole day, I could only say one or two things because, you know, they didn't want me to start talking. So they told me, you know, you can only say one or two things today. And so I chose to say that. I said that there was no opposition to the war during the war. He did not do that. People say that now, and I mentioned the Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind thing, but I'd say they're confusing the fact, really, that he walked in a protest against U.S. nuclear testing in the Pacific, but that was in the 50s. And that was controversial, but it was total projection. But I think that's all been corrected now.
Right.
But the thing is, I still get emails about that from people reading that. And also, every once in a while, you know, on the internet, there's stuff about Hoitsu saying, my father did nothing during the war. He didn't know what his father did. And when I got together with Hoitsu and these old men who'd been with Suzuki, he said, oh, my father did nothing during the war. They said, that's not true. And they corrected him. And they told him what it was like, but it was very subtle. It wasn't like what we do in America. That's why in Crooked Cucumber, I have the story of me being with Suzuki in Berkeley during the Vietnam War and a truck going by calling for the violent overthrow of the American government. Nobody did anything. So that's the way Americans were thinking of in Japan. That the opposition was very subtle. It wasn't opposition. It was trying to calm things down more or something like that to bring a little sanity. And the men who were with Suzuki and Rinso In called it a beacon of light in a vast world of darkness.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, the stories that I've heard from even settlers that went to Manchuria, that it was just incredibly oppressive, and that even going to Manchuria was actually kind of it gave you room to breathe in some ways, that you were just out there by yourself, and you didn't have Kempei Dai looking over your shoulder. You didn't have, you didn't have a lot of ignorant, military police, looking for something bad about you. And the stories that I've heard from people who lived through the war in Japan itself also, that they would tell a joke, as if, for example, they would say, the Tenno Heika looked at, the emperor looked at a mountain and said it was Fujisan, but it was Hakoda-san, or something like that. And that was like a huge, risky joke, to imply that the emperor might not know what he was looking at, or something like that. That was like, that could get you beat up or something, even if not necessarily from the police, but just from your neighbors, just saying, like, I don't like your attitude, and and just so it's that how people express their opposition to things. It might have been by omission, by just forgetting to show up at a certain rally or something like that. Things like that. I don't know. I lived in Spain for a while under Franco, and that's the same kind of mentality. That's the only thing they let you do, is to just sort of get away with a sarcastic comment, maybe, and that marked you, and then you were one of those people, and then you were watched, So, how do you do that? It's hard, and it's hard for Americans to
I understand. I fully understand.
Fred, you did a lot of translating of it, but that was like 23 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and you came up to Nevada City and stuff. It was fun.
So you did a lot of work. I can see you helped a lot, because maybe it requires good Japanese
Fred,
kind of language skills.
Well, anybody can do it if you just have time and decide that you are going to investigate, and you're not going to take the first thing that comes to your mind. I think that's what I've learned about translating as a professional translator, is you just, you really, if you're going to take the translation seriously, you have to be able to admit that, you're going to end up saying things that you don't like to hear.
So what other works do you do?
Just general translation and interpreting, but I've worked for the State Department now for about 10 some years. It was nice when Obama was president, but it's not so nice now.
Yeah. I see.
And I'm just a what do you call a contractor. They send me things, and I've been on military bases. I've spent a lot of time in Las Cruces, El Paso area. There's a large missile range there, so I've done a lot of interpreting there.
My God.
Things like that. Yeah, I'm really
very
familiar.
interesting.
David, I'm really familiar with that area, because I spent a year in Chihuahua, and I would go up to El Paso every few weekends, and also and now I've spent many months, many different years in Las Cruces, and I'm really quite fond of the whole area. I wish I could cross the border and go into Mexico, but when I'm down there on, doing government stuff, I'm really afraid of going across the border for any reason at all. And it's been very dangerous now.
It's too bad.
It's a shame.
Fred
Uh-huh.
translates Spanish too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But,
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
yes. I saw your Tanahashi-san. I saw your brush strokes. How do you get all the different colors in the same brush stroke? How do you do that? That's so fascinating.
No, it's very simple. I have kind of like ketchup bottles. Paint in squeeze bottles. So I pour paint first on the canvas, and then I brush it off.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
by one stroke, I never go back and fix it. Just kind of spontaneously colors mix.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Fred,
Very simple.
Kaz has brought rainbow the rainbow into Shodo, into calligraphy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's got a dimension
especially.
like it's more dimensional. It's more three-dimensional. It's like you think that something is actually swirling in the air when you look at those. That's, instead of just being two-dimensional.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And I developed something called one-stroke painting. It's the same thing. I pour paint, and then also I can make big brushes with felt, and so it's like maybe 6 feet long. It's like a hake like things.
Wow.
And then it has a handle, so I can make kind of 6 feet by 5 feet canvas piece by a few seconds. And then you see a lot of landscapes, But also there's some kind of energy, maybe concentrated, just one stroke, So that is sort of my artwork.
Fred, I don't know if you know it, but Kaz is also the really great translator of Dogen, and is translated the entire Shobo Genzo. So on the one hand, he's this great meticulous scholar, and on the other hand, he's this free-flowing, spontaneous artist. So he really combines. He's got
crazy. That's why I'm good friend with David. We are both crazy.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate very meticulous research, and then I think he's a great writer. So I really admire that. A great thinker too.
Please.
Yeah.
Well, I like David's choice of content. I really do. I mean, it says something about somebody when you see what they're fascinated with, and David's fascinated with that whole life of Suzuki Shindo, and just like he's mentioning, he didn't stop when people said, oh, he was for peace and he did this and he did that. Like, David said, well, wait a minute, was he? What happened?
Right.
And I think the truth is more interesting than what you want it to be.
Yeah,
the
that's
truth
right.
was something that was possible. What people were saying was impossible. Incidentally, Kaz, Fred and I sat up with Brian Victoria in my house all night,
Yes.
going over. Brian went over everything I said about the war. I knew I had to get him involved, or
Uh-huh.
he'd crucify me afterwards.
Wow,
I brought
yeah.
him. I brought
Oh,
him
yeah,
to
that's
Santa
great.
Rosa, and
Uh-huh.
I was living with John Tarrant in his barn for years, and
Right.
and
Right.
Brian
Yeah,
gave a
right.
talk to John's group, the Pacific Zen Institute, and he dressed like a Japanese military officer from World War II and delivered a talk on Imperial
Wow.
Buddhism. It was unbelievable. It was
Wow.
great theater. And then, John's group is in the Harada Yasutani line.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called now.
Yeah.
And Yasutani was,
Sango Kyodan.
oh yeah, Sambo Kyonan.
Yeah, yeah. I met him in Japan long time ago. I was like maybe 27 years old.
Oh goodness.
He was best man for one of my best friends, for our marriage
Yeah.
in Nagoya. Yeah. So in Kyoto, they got married. So, yeah, I met him, but that was the only time I met him. Much before he wrote the Zen at War. Yeah.
He did Zen at War.
Yeah, so he was talking about the Astani supporting war too, right?
Oh, Yasutani's support was very enthusiastic and ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Brian exposed that, and at the in talking with John Tarrant's group, he just totally trashed their lineage and Yasutani. But John's cool, everybody was cool. Brian is sees everything as black and white. To him,
Yeah.
I got that.
he doesn't see much nuance. That's the way I see it. But I've stayed close with him. I saw him in back in 2011. Katrinka and I had dinner with him and his wife in Kyoto. And
In Kyoto, yeah.
yeah, I have a big section on him. But also, I included something Gary Snyder and another scholar, I can't remember who, wrote in defense of D.T. Suzuki. You can't throw out all the good work D.T. Suzuki did because I don't know. It seemed to me that D.T. Suzuki's support was more like people in America saying thank you for your service to soldiers. It wasn't enthusiastic, I don't think. Right, Kaz?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Not what I've seen.
I'm not so interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone was supporting war. So,
Well, we support the war in America.
Japan.
Everybody, America, to me, America's imperialism and violence in the world is ignored.
I think, but America, U.S. has some kind of maybe freedom of speech.
Yes.
There are some people who can, and then, this conscientious resistance, and, it's totally a different, maybe system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
This is an interesting topic because we here, the United States has had different aggressive wars now. Even under Obama, we've been waging war, and it's something where if you take a look at the two countries, if you take a look at the United States and you take a look at Japan, you see what Kaz has just pointed out, which is that people argue here in the United States, and then the loser loses, but is still, in America and gets to have a say so. Daniel Webster was against the war against Mexico in the 1840s. I mean, it's just something that gets allowed. Well, in Japan, you don't get allowed to really just culturally or socially. It's extremely difficult to have a contrary opinion, and so you have to finesse it. You have to be very careful about it. And when we take a look at the arguments between Japan and China and Korea right now, or in the last decade or so, about the comfort women and things like that. To me, as an American, I look at Japan, and yes, I can see the point that that these other East Asian countries are making about Japan. That it's very difficult to just like fess up to these things. At the same time, I don't see that either Koreans or Chinese are able to fess up to things either. From a third-party standpoint, it doesn't look to me like Koreans are ready to fess up to the profiteering over prostitution with American servicemen. I don't think that the Chinese are ready to fess up to the slaughter that they performed on their own people, and it's all. It's okay. All right, you're pointing out something in Japan, and Japan it's they don't want to face their history. True, and neither do you. It's what it looks like to me.
Well, some people do. Some people do. I would meet just normal, everyday people, not my intellectual international friends, who were well aware. I had an English student who was a housewife in our neighborhood in Okayama, which is, Okayama, and she had refused to believe in Japanese atrocities in China in the war. So her sister took her to a village where Japanese soldiers had killed everybody in the village for going out at night and doing moon viewing, and all their bodies were kept and buried in the spot where they were, and a big monument was made for it. And then she turned around, Kaz has been very involved with anti-nuclear work, both anti-nuclear power and anti-nuclear weapons, and that's one thing he and I were both involved with, and that is still a big threat. Well, that's an enormous threat. That the threat of nuclear war, especially accidental nuclear war, and climate change just reduce everything else we're talking about to almost being very tiny, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, even the conservative Hoover Institution at Stanford, has been promoting the Plowshares Initiative, and functionaries that are from the Republican Party. There's a whole group of those people that are just trying to reduce these weapons as much as possible, and the people that have from the Republican Party that have made effort in that direction have been ditched by the party. This Republican Party is just it's a monster. It's very, very, it's awful. It's a kaibutsu. It's a monster.
Kaz,
It's
what do you see now as the situation in the world with the threat of nuclear weapons and the situation with nuclear power and
Well, I think, I was very worried. I think 2007, we are close to kind of have a war with North Korea, right?
hmm
Yeah, and then both sides were kind of really provoking to each other verbally, but also militarily, and we are very close. And then, so I started a website called nowar.with.northkorea.org.
Mm.
So I've been kind of working with maybe 140 organizations, in the U.S. peace organizations. Many of them are South Korean people's organizations. And then I think last year we made a kind of declaration for kind of peace treaty now, And then we were saying that maybe in 2007 we were so close to a nuclear war with North Korea, and everyone signed, and then none of the peace organization kind of people say this is exaggeration. Everyone signed. So, and I personally felt we are very close. So that's why I was so worried and started doing this campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, I worry about
now it's a little bit. We are sort of we have breathing room. Maybe more Iran became a little bit more kind of dangerous. But still, I think in my mind, Trump has only one card. It's not a joke. Trump has only one card.
Yeah.
That is to unite the entire nation. That is to go to war,
Yeah.
So he could use any time. I mean, he has the power to do that. And then actually, he was close to attack Iran, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, military was going along, and he backed up. But anyway, I don't think we should be relaxed.
Right. Right. Yes. I certainly agree. Well, maybe we should call it a day.
Yeah.
It's
Well, yeah. Thank you for your call, and David,
gathering.
and
It was a fascinating gathering.
yeah, it's been really interesting.
Fred, nice to meet you. And
likewise, yes. これからもよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。Yeah, it would be nice to kind of meet you one time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I need to learn more about Buddhism.
Kaz, thank you for everything you've done to try to make the world a safer place, for your translations of Dogen, and he's done so many things.
Well, yeah, thank you for making this World Suicide Club.
Right.
Now we are right on.
Oh yeah, I know. I do get emails and Facebook messages. The World Suicide Club was right. was
Yeah.
well, anyway, about it. Um,
Yeah, now we are in end times, many people believe.
yeah,
So actually, we're rushing toward collective suicide.
that's right. That's right. I
Yeah,
I believe it. I mean, I believe that the human race has a strong, maybe it's a dominant urge to destroy itself. It doesn't realize it, but it's right now
right.
the main struggle is to me that the human race is having is whether to destroy ourselves or not. And I see the destroyers winning, but what I see now that is and Jerry Brown is very aware of these things. And what other politicians have said that it's not only us, but it's vertebrates that are threatened. I mean, what we're doing to the climate, and Stephen Hawking pointed that out. We could bring about weather that just it'd be very hard for any type of higher life to survive in. Not nice.
Right. Right.
So, but,
Uh-huh.
but there are
Yeah.
definitely strong
Yeah.
forces trying to survive and trying to turn it around, and cause is one of them.
Well,
I support
maybe you
that.
should celebrate yourself. You are prophetic.
Huh. Yeah.
Well, we should, we shouldn't be happy about the situation anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
at least you have an insight.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.
And we'll be
Bye.
in touch.
Bye, Fred. Yeah, okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
So thanks a lot, Kaz Tanahashi and Fred Harriman. I hope to be visiting with the two of you more later. And to you, dear listener, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be having more phone chats, and I'll continue reading Crooked Cucumber and putting it up on Tuesdays with comments. And the mini podcasts, reading vignettes from Zen is Right Here, and Life in Bali once a week. Right now I'm doing Life in Bali on Thursdays and the phone chats on Saturdays. If you'd like to make a contribution to help keep the engines of Cuke Archives and Cuke Audio running, just go to cuke.com and hit the donate button on top or bottom. There's also one on Cuke Audio Podbean, and you can send a check or contribute with PayPal, including become a subscriber for as little as $1 a month. And it's all very easy to do, and we'd really appreciate it. So until we meet again, this is DC Poobah of Cuke Archives and Cuke Audio, wishing you and all of us a grand awakening.